Modelo Especial. That's correct. Today is a beer day video, a beer video. Because I just sent off the rough draft of the Rangers of Shadow Deep screenplay to a handful of people, including Mr. McCullough himself. And I need to chat about how freaking nervous I am. and we should chat about how to mentally prepare for criticism, aka feedback. But, you know, beer helps with that. Anyway, today's video is probably way more for me than it is for you. Oh boy. Greetings, good humans, and welcome to Tabletop Alchemy, where sometimes we just talk about psychology and how to deal with nerves and maybe how to grow as a person. Actually, we're not going to talk about hardly any of that stuff. That's just kind of what I thought I was going to talk about, but really it just devolves into, well, you'll see if you stick around. If you have a beer, stick around. It might be worth it. It's probably not. Who am I kidding? Anyway, you know, we thank our patrons for all their support while I use this platform to vent about my personal nervousness. This is already helping. This is helping, and this is helping. You're helping. The fact that I could just sit down here, have a little chat, and be myself, I really do appreciate that. Thank you guys. All right, so I don't know how this is going to go. I have a script. It's right up there. I don't know how it's going to work out. All right, but let's get into it. Let's be serious for a moment. Okay, so I've just done something that I typically try very hard not to do. Like every artist or creator out there, including you, doesn't matter what level of skill you're at or what professional level or whatever, we all typically make things to share with other people. Not always, but sometimes, a lot of the time. But I'll bet most of us feel a little twinge of self-doubt right before we do. Hopefully I'm not just talking about myself. And this video is completely unrelatable. More beer, please. You might be a highly confident individual, and if so, the free donuts are they're in the back over there. I am not a highly confident I am not an individual who can speak while reading a teleprompter. Let's try that one more time. I am not a highly confident individual, despite what editing might make it seem like. I have tried to subscribe to this whole fake it till you make it Ponzi scheme. Is it working? That's not a rhetorical question. I need to know. Anyway, I have a tendency to look at things I share right after I share them, and usually feel like, maybe I shouldn't have shared that just yet. Okay, so, you know, there's that whole thing. Like, literally, if I send someone a video or even an email sometimes, as soon as I send it, I end up like rereading the email that I just sent, what I wrote, and second guessing like a bunch of stuff. I don't know why I do that, but anyway, there's something else that's even more messed up this time around with this particular thing I'm talking about. Now, I don't know if I've ever really heard about this sort of thing, like concerning like painting miniatures or models or stuff like that, but there's definitely this thing with writing projects or video editing or finishing video products, things of that nature, where the rule of thumb is to always put a said project aside for a little while. Once you've kind of finished it, where you think you finished it, you put it aside for a little while so you can come back to it, and when you come back to it, you have like fresh eyes, right? And I found this to be a pretty consistent piece of advice concerning projects like that, like writing projects and other, I don't know how to, what to call this category of projects, but I guess presentational. I don't know if this really pertains to like art projects where you're just doing pure art, but maybe commercial art projects, this is probably pertains to that. I'm gonna cut a lot of burps out of this video. Don't know why I need to let you in on that. So when you're fresh off of working on something, you know, I think it's virtually impossible to see errors and things like that because you're so, you know, you're just so inside of it, right? It's very hard to gain an objective perspective of, I don't know what I'm doing here. If this was a camera and this was outside of an object, you can get an objective perspective, but when you're inside the object looking out, it's hard to be objective about it, right? It's hard to be objective or gain an objective perspective of something you've made because you've made it. And it's really hard to gain that objectivity when you're very close to it. Close to it could mean emotionally close to it, or it could just mean time frame wise, like you just finished it. It's really hard to look at something objective when you've just finished it, right? The day that I dropped last week's video is also the day that I finished my rough draft of the, or maybe I should say a Rangers of Shadow Deep screenplay. Now, I rewrote that crazy treatment thing I talked about in that video, and maybe rewriting is the wrong term. I converted it and finished it out in Final Draft software in screenplay format. So it's like a legit screenplay at this point. It's not a treatment or anything. It's a screenplay. Legit might be a strong word. But it came out to be a 145-page behemoth of a script, which in actuality I was a little surprised by. I thought for sure it was going to hit like 180 pages or something. But the fact that it hit 145 pages was a little more heartening than disheartening, I guess. But, you know, it's chock full of cheesy dialogue and too many scenes and clunky plot devices. All the good stuff you should expect from a rough draft. It's all in there. It's great from that perspective. And then I sent it to a circle of first readers. And I did not rewrite it at all. I didn't take any time away from it. I just got it into screenplay format. I just sent it out. Specifically, I sent it out with a list of requests for candid, unfiltered critiques. Basically, my mindset for this project is that it's got to keep moving forward. This is not about me perfecting a screenplay for no other purpose. Like, I'm not writing this as a singular goal, right? The screenplay is not what this is about. It's about making a movie within a certain time frame. Now, as soon as I sent it out, I started to reread it in PDF format. Now, that's another trick you can do for writing projects, right? Maybe I found the trick of putting something into an uneditable form, like where you can't change it at all, right? So reading it in a PDF form, like it really helps with finding stuff that's wrong with it. Because as you're reading through, you kind of weirdly know that you can't fix it. So you're like, oh, the things pop out that you want to fix, but obviously you can't fix it because it's in a fixed format, right? So it's really a kind of a helpful way to proofread things, I found, to help, at least it helps me out. Now, as I reread what I'd sent out, the script here, I started to feel worse and worse about what I'd spent all my time and energy on over the last 3 weeks. I even feel like it's possible that I could be undermining confidence in the whole project just by sharing something that's in this very rudimentary state. It's something that I'm kind of realizing that, I mean, I kind of know it to begin with, but I wasn't really paying attention or focusing on the fact that the screenplay, it's probably the most important, this is not like a surprise or anything, but it's like the most important asset of this entire project. It doesn't become the most important asset of the project in post-production or by the end of the movie, but it's so key at the beginning because it is the one thing that is going to get, say, a cast on board, possibly producers, things like that, right? The screenplay is all we have to go on. Now, yes, there can be camera tests, there can be teaser trailers, there can be other visual things that show something, but really the idea, you know, of having the story and then making it a good story, that is really the pivotal piece of the puzzle that we're putting together here, right? So it's like, dang, wow, it's important to get it right. And this all sounds like a big giant duh. Like, of course you got to get the screenplay right. It's just like you kind of vaguely know certain things out there. Like, you understand certain things, but you don't really pay attention to it until you get to that moment, to that step in the process, and you're like, oh, that's right. This is that important, or this is that thing. I got to tackle that now, right? That's kind of what this is proving to be. Obviously, sharing something in a half-baked state is never optimal, right? Except for when it is. In this category of things, commercial art, whatever we want to call this. Sometimes it's either unavoidable or it's actually highly advantageous, even though it's so difficult to do. And when I mean by difficult, I mean nerve-wracking, which I feel like is the case for the screenplay thing, because I need to get objective perspectives on this thing. I kind of have to have other people look at it and tear it up. So now it's just me dealing with how to make sure I am prepared for taking the criticism, which is not always, contrary to popular opinion, it's not always an easy thing to do, even when you think you're prepared to do so. I mean, as much as I think I'm prepared and knowing even certain areas that need specific types of changes and work on them in the screenplay, I got to mentally prepare myself for all the potential criticism of things I'm not like pre-criticizing myself. Guaranteed there's stuff that people are going to say that I'm not something that I thought of, right? And it's totally fine. I mean, at this stage, I understand that what I've written is fairly floppy, right? In qualitative level. But at the same time, I make it sound like I didn't put a lot of work into this. It's like, hey, I just kind of messed it up. That's not really true. Like, let's just be honest. Let me be honest. Like, I put a lot of work into it. I know that there's a lot of work that has to be done with it, but it's not like I slacked off while I was putting the work that I did put into it. And when I said I didn't take any budget into account, I didn't take budget into account to a certain extent, but I do have a lot of ideas about how to pull off some of the things that I put in the screenplay. Not all of them, but some of them. There's a lot of things that I feel like do work and will be cool. And of course, I'm going to be, I got to be mentally prepared for some people to come back and pick those things out that I think are good in the big morass of ungood things that's definitely there. And some people may not like those things. And that's okay. I just got to be prepared for that. I suppose getting feedback is really one of the most important parts of any process in the creation of something. And of course, it's not like you have to take all feedback you might receive about a certain project or product or whatever, but if you're making something for other people to enjoy, not strictly just yourself, which of course brings up the whole notion of making anything that's somewhat creative, I think you always have to start from a place of you wanting to make something that you enjoy, that you like. Like, I think it's really a doomed road to walk if you set out to make a project specifically just to sell to other people. I think if you don't have any vested interest creatively in the thing, it's really not going to work the way that you think it is, or it just turns into a scam. I don't know. Anyway, there's like a whole bunch of rambles that could spin off of a lot of these things that I'm touching on. I'm just trying to talk about being nervous about criticism and how we all got to be able to take constructive feedback and why that's important sometimes. I mean, another thing that's kind of strategic and important to do when you put something out for feedback is to give it to the right folks, right? I mean, this can be kind of tricky, and there are other things I'm trying to keep in mind as far as like this particular screenplay thing. I'm going to need more readers later for future drafts, and probably some of the people I'm giving this draft to are not going to have the stamina or the willingness to read subsequent drafts. I mean, it takes a lot of time. When you give something to someone to look at, no matter what it is, on any scale, even if it's a minute-long video, you're asking for someone to take a minute or 2 minutes of their time, which is valuable to them, and give it to you. And reading anything, it takes a lot of time. Reading a 145-page screenplay, that's going to take bucket loads of time for people to do. And to ask people to do that, you're asking for their time, which we've all discussed and we know is the most valuable commodity that humans have. So you're asking a lot when you ask people to read stuff. Anyway, so that's a lot of babbling just for myself about, really this video is just about my mental state in this particular week, at this particular moment that I'm recording this video. This is my mental state. It's what I'm dealing with. So I had to make a video because I couldn't make other videos. I couldn't get out of my head to do it. It's been a little difficult. I don't know if any of you can relate to this, but it's kind of like I get stuck into a project or a portion of a project and work really hard, and I focus on a certain thing. Like that's like the screenplay here. I literally spent the last 3 weeks working on just that, like all consuming. So it's hard to sort of bounce out of that for me, and especially to bounce out of it and to jump onto another topic and do something completely different, because my head is still trailing. It's like my body or whatever, my brain is physically moving into some other space, but my mental space is still dragging in that other realm that I was in. And of course, on top of that, I'm waiting for people to get back to me on what they think of the whole thing, and I'm nervously anticipating that sort of stuff and all that good stuff, so it's not helping. So that's why you got this video today. Hence why I got beer. Now, to wrap this up, let's do one fun thing with the screenplay that I wrote. We can do one fun thing with it, right? Let's do one fun thing in this video. Anyway, as I mentioned, I wrote it up in Final Draft, which I've used before, years and years ago. And when I cracked it open this time, I was surprised to find these certain things you can do with it now. I mean, it's a full industry standard software. There's a reason people use it. There are other screenwriting apps that you can use. Final Draft is fairly industry standard, and it has a lot of tools that you can use for production. It has things in there. You can do all kinds of weird stuff that producers will use it for, and assistant directors and people like that. You can make all these. It's kind of like the app itself breaks apart your screenplay into different ways so that you can categorize things like props and locations, and you can help that can really create all these different lists for you and different things to help with logistics in production. So there's this whole section in the menu called reports. Now we're just going to look at two of them real quick that I found pretty interesting. So here's something called a cast report, and there are these different categories we can select to include or not include, and we can set the sorting order to, I don't know, let's order it by most speaking scenes, descending. So we'll see the character with the most lines. Well, maybe not the most lines per se, but with the most dialogues. You could have someone with a lot of dialogue sections, but maybe each of those dialogue sections only contains one word or one line. So the number of lines is not really counted here, I don't think. I think it's the number of dialogues, right? So we'll see the person who sort of has the most lines at the top. So there we go. There's a list of all the speaking parts in this particular draft, ordered by the number of dialogues. Now, it makes sense that our main character, our hero, Roya, has the most lines. She's also in the most scenes. She's in 50 scenes. These top 7 characters are all in our warband. So that makes sense. And then there's the field marshal character. Obviously, it looks like he's in quite a few scenes, more than I thought. And there's Viven, who is our 8th warband member. And since he has quite a lot fewer lines and scenes than the other warband characters, I guess you could infer some things from that statistic. Okay. All right, let's check out this other report, the statistics report. Now, the first time I brought this up, I was totally surprised to see this profanity category. I was like, yep, we got to see this report. This is perfect. Now, Joe and I discussed what rating we should be going for the movie, and he was a proponent of going for PG-13, with the idea being, why limit our audience, which is what rating a movie R can tend to do. I mean, it limits the number of potential viewers you can reach out to, of course. So that's really the goal, but to just let myself get this rough draft done, I just didn't worry about the F-bombs. They just come naturally to me. What can I say? I mean, there's just something about a person being in a stressful situation who is also a soldier that a well-placed F-bomb is just, it's hard to beat when it comes to making something feel visceral and real. So, I just let it go, and this is apparently what the characters say, profanity-wise. 1 ass, and 4 of these, and 9 of these. And here we go. There's the F-bomb list. You add them all together and you get 44 F-bombs, which for me is probably really low on the spectrum, especially in a 145-page script. And even though the characters are listed there in each section of who says these things, I know for a fact that 85% of these F-bombs come out of one character's mouth. Crimson Cole Blackburn, the psychopath. We also have 8 shits, so there. I don't know if you found that as entertaining as I did, but I was fairly entertained by that. Just the fact that I could pull up a profanity report. Okay, well, next week we'll get back into some gaming stuff, and yeah, I guess try not to stress when your cat won't be quiet during video filming. Hey man, what are you doing? You don't got it. I'm almost done. Digging in model kits. That's what she's doing. Anyway, I was trying to say, try not to stress when you're going to share your work and when you ask for feedback. Do it strategically, because feedback and criticism is not only good, but often necessary and can be very helpful. So, go get something done. See ya.